Our next speaker will be Dr. Evelyne A Reisacher, who's our Associate Professor of Islamic Studies and Intercultural Relationships here at Fuller's School of Intercultural Studies. We look forward to your remarks. Dr. Reisacher.
I first of all want to really thank God and bless His name, His precious name. We are here together, and I'm so delighted actually that we have this opportunity to meet, because I strongly believe that it is very important for us at Fuller to be in conversation with the Muslim community, because Muslims who live in the US can give us really a perspective that we outsiders cannot get from the realities of their community. In the past, too often we have actually, as Christians, studied Islam without being in conversation with the Muslim community. And I think the beauty today is that we are able to do this together. So Fuller is a cosmopolitan place, and there are students from everywhere. I'm an example. I'm a faculty from France, and I'm French. I find myself on an emotional roller coaster with many of my students currently, because I have students from Nigeria, from Pakistan, from Lebanon, and all, there is suffering on both sides, Muslim and Christian side, in many places, in many of these countries. And I myself flew to Paris right away after the Paris attack to be not just with my Christian friends, but with my Muslim friends who have also lost people in their lives. So I'm sure that we can all share our joys and our griefs together, both our Muslim guests and ourselves. But the question that I am asking myself right now is the question that was announced for tonight, is how do relationships look like in times where there seems to be really fear although there are lots of amazing things happening, and we could mention, for example, the blogs that are coming in from Beirut, from our professor, Fuller Akkad, who is talking about the work that Muslims and Christians are doing with the refugees in Beirut. And Martin Akkad is going to be here this summer to talk about that and teach. There are also good signs of the Marrakesh Declaration, where Muslim leaders stated that actually there will be protection of the Christian minority in Muslim majority lands. And there are lots of also good things happening that we hear at Fuller when I'm in my office and I receive emails from students who are all over the Muslim world, maybe working with churches or Christian organizations, and sharing a respectful witness of their faith in a Muslim context. So there are lots of times where we also can rejoice together, but what about fear? And I would just let me just say, that I would be among the fear-mongering crowd if you have talked to me maybe 40 years ago. But because I've had so many Muslim friends in my life, and I've spent so much time with this friend, this has really changed my attitudes and my behaviors. But we have to ask ourselves the question, and it would be interesting actually to do, we don't have time, but if we do a survey today, and several surveys out there right now who are testing people's fears, we'll be curious to know what would come out tonight. Jihad already mentioned some of the apprehensions that Christian leaders have. This was actually evidenced by some research at the Lausanne conference in Cape Town, where the Pew Research did a research. But there are also other more broader research that have been done, for example, in 2014, also by the Pew Research, on actually how Americans feel about religious groups. And they showed, Pew Research showed to 3,000 adults what they call a feeling thermometer. And sadly, the 0 was the coldest feeling toward another religious group, and 100 was the warmest. And sadly, actually, it was the Muslims who were actually rated the lowest on 40%. And this is also evidenced on the Islamophobia scale, which is a scale that starts to be used now since 2009. So given these sobering results, we have to ask our question. What do we do in view of these results? And we could all share stories about people who are, even in our churches, who are wondering, what is Islam? And is Islam violent, etc.? So what do we do in view of these results? And I'm sure the Muslim community is dealing the same with the Christian. Who are the Christians? And should we be afraid of the Christians? Should we be afraid of the missionaries who are coming to our country? So we are all dealing with some of these fears. But the question that I'm asking tonight is, will we blindly follow these trends? Of course, we know the command, love your neighbor. But in times of fear triggers avoidance or triggers attack or freezing. So that's not very good to develop a healthy relationship if either you avoid or you attack or you freeze. But instead of listing fears, I suggest from my own context, I would like to suggest something tonight. I would like to suggest 3 virtues: the virtue of justice, the virtue of mercy, and humbly walking with God. Some of the audience will probably recognize where I take this from. Micah 6:8, which is a very familiar passage for us here at Fuller. I just want to read that text. God has shown you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require from you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. And I think these virtues may not alleviate all fears, but they will at least challenge Islamophobia. Remember one of the definitions of Islamophobia, and again, Christianophobia would be the same: unfounded hostility toward the other religion and fear and dislike of all the people in that community. Because I understand that fear may time to be diffused, some fears may never disappear, I decided to add an expression in front of this recommendation to use these 3 virtues. Even when afraid, I seek justice. Incidentally, Jesus was identifying the New Testament as the one which God put his Spirit in and brought justice to the nations. So justice matters for Christians, justice matters for Muslims. I know it from many of the dialogues where I was in, and sometimes from the first question that came from my Muslim audience is, do we see justice when we look at countries that have been Christianized? Where is the justice? We all long for justice. People in the Middle East right now long for justice and are trying all kinds of ways to try to bring this justice, from peaceful to more violent. Churches in the Middle East are looking for justice. I have students who are asking and praying for the churches in the Middle East and praying for Muslims who suffer also in the Middle East. Muslim background believers, followers of Jesus, are seeking for justice to worship freely where they are. Muslim Americans long for justice, I hear, for so many of my friends, and who would like to live and peacefully and just worship like any other American. Justice is important. So that's the first virtue. The second virtue I want to suggest from this same passage is mercy. Mercy, like justice, is such a beautiful word. It is woven through the text of our sacred text. Mercy in love involves love, loyalty, patience, grace, kindness. And mercy invites us to see the other person as a human being that deserves dignity. One of the features often associated to Islamophobia is the objectivization of Islam. By looking at a religion as an object, we forget that religions would be nothing without people. People who worship, people who believe, who doubt, who have needs, who have feelings. They are the living expression of that faith. I also hear from Christians in Muslim-majority countries that they sometimes face Christianophobia for a similar reason. We don't know, we objectify, we look at religion as an object. Mercy has led many Christian friends I know to engage in practices, sometimes together with Muslims, to challenge these hostile environments. So, for example, creating safe spaces. I read that from one of my friend who works in the UK. How do you provide in places of tension these safe places? And I was just yesterday at the event that Michal and Sundos have organized here in Pasadena. And then Michal, I'm sure, will share more about it, that how to build interfaith friendships, not just relationships, but friendships. That was a safe place where actually you could come and talk. And there are also lots of other ways. The peacemaking, I'm thinking about the Peacemaking Catalyst International, led by Rick Love, who some people know here in that room because he was here at Fuller for a while. And just that peacemaking, giving us just simple ways to actually reduce conflict. And the list could go on and on. And let me finish by the last one, which is walk humbly with God. And I think what characterizes Muslim Christian initiative compared to other kinds of initiative is that they are held by actually two groups who are deeply devoted and want to submit to God. And this humility that we learn in our relationship with God should also be reflected in our relationships. Walking with God will change the way I look at people and even may alleviate fears. Let me give you a few examples. I was in a conversation last week with a person here, and this person said, each time I hear a derogative word about people from another faith that seem to violate their human dignity, I stop them. I tell the person, where are the facts? If I don't do it, I feel guilty to spread the rumor myself. So rumor is circulating, but what if we could stop some of the rumors? Well, there are times when fear is founded. Fears of the unknown, fear of changes that some forms of Islam could bring to society, fear of being killed. Of course, you would run away for somebody who that you know for sure is going to attack you. Fear also that Muslims have walking in the street wearing a hijab. The retaliation after maybe suicide bombing, what is going to happen in their neighborhood. These are founded fears, but there are also unfounded fears. I do a little exercise in my class, actually. I propose to my students two premises. And all Muslims are terrorists. Malik, my neighbor, is a Muslim. Therefore, Malik, my neighbor, is a terrorist. The argumentation seems to flow logically. However, the conclusion is totally flawed. Why? Who said that the first premise, all Muslims are terrorists, is based on empirical evidence? Has anyone collected that evidence? No, of course not. But these are the kind of discourses that circulate in our midst. What are the proofs? What empirical research supports this fact is always something we have to ask, because if we start with a false premise, all our conclusions are going to be flawed. Walking humbly with God requires that we look at the other as God looks at him or her, with integrity, without false reports. Remember, this is one of the 10 commandments. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. We must address the issues where false reports are circulating about another faith community. So let me conclude. Yes, there is fear. We cannot say to someone, don't fear. If they fear, have you ever tried? Say to a child, don't fear. Well, you need more than that. That doesn't lower the fear, but we must listen and acknowledge these fears. Some fears are founded. Let's address them. Some fears may fade away quickly. Others may be more persistent. But we should also recognize one danger inherent to the emotion of fear. It can lead to Islamophobia or Christianophobia. We cannot wait until fear disappears to address this issue. I therefore recommend to my community of faith to, even when afraid, embrace the godly virtues of justice, mercy, and humbly working with God as they engage in Muslim-Christian relation. I'm glad, actually, that we have this interfaith setting where I can also hear and learn from our Muslim guests how we can engage in these relation. And one final word, the three virtues of justice, mercy, and humble walk with God are not dissociated. Justice needs mercy, and both flourish in the context of a humble surrendering to the God of justice and mercy. Thank you.